Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Tanis Crosby. I serve as Executive Director, San Francisco-Marin Food Bank. We are honored to be hosting this community roundtable. Speaker Pelosi, thank you for leading this convening. We are thrilled to welcome you and Chair McGovern. We are here today to talk about hunger in our community. We are just weeks away from the first White House conference on hunger, nutrition, and health in over half a century. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for the federal government to take concerted action to address hunger and its root causes. We know the pandemic shone a light on hunger and the harsh realities of food insecurity in our community, and we all know that this is not a COVID-era problem. For too long, we have seen our neighbors, even those with full-time jobs, spend most of their income on rent, utilities, and gas with little left for food. For too long, we've seen seniors forced to make a choice between medicine and food. We've seen children struggling to learn on empty bellies while parents skip meals so their children can eat. And we've seen the high cost of lack of available, fresh, and healthy food in all neighborhoods. The impacts of hunger are compounding and pervasive, but they do not affect us all equally. Black and brown families face twice the rates of food insecurity as white families. That's not a coincidence. That is a legacy of structural racism and systemic issues like poverty and oppression and inefficient social safety nets and income inequality. We applaud the federal government for recognizing the intersectionality of these issues and creating a conference on hunger that will include 20 different government agencies. Because hunger does not exist in a vacuum. It is interconnected with housing and healthcare and education and veterans affairs, transportation, and more. We know there is no quick fix, but we also know that there are solutions that work. We must protect and strengthen SNAP. It is our nation's biggest and most effective anti-hunger and anti-poverty program by improving benefits and making the administrative flexibilities that we've seen work. They need to be permanent. We must invest in children and families, support Healthy Meals, Healthy Kids Act, to ensure a hunger-free future for our children. We must recognize that healthy and sustainable food systems that advance equity and uplift socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers are fundamental to ending hunger. And we need to ensure continued federal government support for TFAP. Emergency food commodities are an essential part of addressing the immediate need for food assistance. It will take all of us to truly end hunger, from grassroots community partnerships to our elected officials, which is why I am so pleased to welcome you all here today, our incredible panelists who are uplifting solutions with, by, and for our communities, and our extraordinary leaders. Speaker Pelosi, you are an extraordinary leader. Your steadfast. It is our honor to welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanis, for your tremendous leadership and your beautiful presentation about our values and the challenges we face and the solutions that we have that you have been so much a part of. It's my honor to join you here. Maha, you have grown and continue to grow. I've had the occasion to be with you at pop-up centers and other times when we're just helping load the bags and the rest here. But now you are expanding even further, and we're happy to be part of that. We'll talk about that later. But here's the thing. As Tanis was speaking, you would think, how could that be happening in the United States of America, the greatest country that ever existed in the history of the world? And it's why I, frankly, am in politics. I have 5 children, and the fact that people would say 1 in 5 children in America goes to sleep hungry at night was just, no, who would I choose is going to be hungry tonight? It's just, we had to have a different statement of values about our country. But as Tanis said, this is not an issue that it's been exacerbated by COVID, but it existed long before that. And because of the generosity of spirit of so many people in this room, I see my friend Florence Fang, and I see Annie Chung. Florence and I have been working on this for like 35 years. Annie even longer, more like 40 years. But St. Anthony's, the Glide Memorial, so many groups here. Perhaps in the Q&A we'll hear from you. But it is, we're all grateful to you for being instruments of peace in terms of the lives of these children, because Tanis said it's not just a health issue, it's an education issue, it affects everything in their lives, and more a mental health issue as well. And as you have indicated, hungry children can't really learn. How could it be? And the fact that it is more devastatingly impacting communities of colors is sinful, almost criminal on our part. So thank you to the San Francisco-Marin Food Bank for the leadership that you have provided, but thank you to all of the groups here. I'm honored to be here with my colleague, Congressman Jim McGovern, but before I introduce him, I want to thank St. Anthony's Dining Room, where we spend our Thanksgiving holiday with our whole family, and sadly not as much as we wanted recently because of COVID, but as much as you will allow. And Chris Helfrich, Eat, Learn, and Play. I just want to call to your attention that 2 years ago, seems like a long time ago, but 2 years ago, 2020, when we were doing the continuing resolution, and our chairman was very much a part of this, Chris joined us with the Currys, both Currys, to talk about getting money for the children, particularly for the education program. And I said it's impossible because we have a continuing resolution that is supposed to be clean. They will not allow us to put anything in the continuing resolution, which is something that is in the place of an appropriations bill until you come to terms. I said, well, but if there's any chance, we'll try to do that. But I don't want to give you any false hope, as important as this is. So in any case, the Republicans came back and said, in this clean bill, we want tens of billions of dollars for the farmers. I said, well, how clean is that? That isn't clean. That isn't clean. Well, the president had turned off trade with China, and they were losing market share, so the president was paying them off out of this slush fund that he wanted to establish. Ordinarily, I would have resisted its lack of cleanliness. However, we had our own goals, and we were able to get $8 billion in that continuing resolution, thanks to your advocacy and thanks to your leadership. We were able to do that, but it shouldn't have to depend on that. We should have something so much more reliable. And to that, and I think it's an honor to be with all of you here, but to that end, we are all here to listen to you so that when we do go forward, we are doing so with the best possible community-based information about needs for flexibility or whatever. Our champion on this, our patron saint, our spiritual leader, has been Jim McGovern. For as long as I can remember him in Congress, he's been having hunger strikes, and I would say to him, Jim, you're a wonderful person. Nobody cares on the other side. They just are not caring, right? And he still starved in the hopes of calling the attention to it, even if we couldn't get their support for it. But in any case, this conference on hunger that the president will be having, and we don't know exact date yet, at the end of the month, is the idea of Jim McGovern. He has been promoting this for a very long time, as I know others of you have. But he has had the president's ear on this subject relentlessly, persistently. And our president is, how can I say, I had a phrase about him, that he considers President Biden have fought to honor our sacred obligation to our children. So thank you for your leadership in so many ways, every day for our children, but for establishing this conference, which, again, we hope to bring your ideas to by way of our distinguished chairman. People say, oh, is he related to George McGovern Dole? No, not really a relative, but a relative in spirit in terms of having the same priority. Again, I left the house because 1 in 5 children in America are living in poverty. We have no better leader in terms of hunger, especially, than Jim McGovern. So it's my honor to welcome him here today. He also is the chair of the almighty powerful Rules Committee of the House. Nothing can go to the floor without his permission. So he has some leverage there.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm so happy to be with all of you and welcoming us here to this magnificent food bank. And I've met with food banks and community partners all across the country, and you all are heroes as far as I'm concerned. And I'm grateful to Speaker Pelosi for convening this important conversation. You know, when I first told her that we wanted to get the White House to do this White House conference on hunger and health and nutrition, she didn't hesitate to respond. She just said, how can I help? And I believe that it was her intervention and her calling them, she's more persuasive than I am, that got them to say yes. And here's the deal. I mean, she's always likes to say, for the children, there's no greater champion for our children. And she and I think I speak for everybody in this room here today, have been driven by an idea that unfortunately some people think is radical, but that idea is that no person in this country should go hungry, and that everybody should have access to good, nutritious food. No child should go to bed without food because their family can't afford dinner. No student should show up to class on an empty stomach because mom and dad had to choose between breakfast and rent. Speaker Pelosi has been tireless and brilliant in working to end hunger, and I want to thank her again for bringing us here today. Look, I'm going to keep my opening very brief because this event, as she pointed out, is about hearing from you. Look, America is the richest country in the history of the world, and we have plenty of food to feed everybody. In fact, billions of pounds of food goes to waste every year. We discard about 40% of what we raise and what we produce in terms of food. It is one of the great moral failures and outrages of our time that even a single person in this country goes hungry. I tell people all the time that hunger is a political condition. And by that I mean is we have everything. What we have lacked is the political will to make this a priority and just solve it. I think America right now is at a crossroads. Thanks to the Speaker's leadership in Congress, the federal government stepped up to help blunt the impact of this terrible pandemic that wreaked havoc on struggling families. We raised the SNAP benefit by 15%, brought school lunches and summer meals home for students who were learning remotely, and we expanded the child tax credit, which we know was used by many families to buy groceries. These programs, they made a difference, right? And we saw poverty going down. I've heard from countless families who tell me that they would have gone hungry had it not been for the SNAP increases or the summer meals programs. Yet, as many of these emergency hunger and nutrition programs that began during the pandemic come to an end, I hear people say, okay, now it's time to go back to normal. But normal meant that 40 million people in this country didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. And right now, at a time of increasing inequality and rising food prices and inflation, normal is simply not good enough. We need to do better. And to be honest with you, as a congressman, as a human being, I'm ashamed of what we accepted as normal in this country for so long. We should be ashamed. Hunger should not be normal. And that's why many of us have requested the White House take leadership. Interestingly enough, I told you this should not be a partisan issue. The Speaker mentioned George McGovern, who I actually worked for going through college. No relation, had a great last name. But he worked with Bob Dole. McGovern, a liberal Democrat, Bob Dole, a conservative Republican. And we were making progress in the 1970s to alleviate hunger. And we have worked in a bipartisan way. The Congresswoman Jackie Walorski of Indiana, unfortunately, you may have read, was killed recently in a terrible car crash. But she joined with me in asking that we do this White House conference. And so, look, right now in our government, there is no single person or no single agency whose job it is to end hunger. There's no single congressional committee whose responsibility is to connect all the dots and figure out a way to end hunger. And so we believe that, through a White House conference, we can convene all the agencies and use the power of the White House to bring the federal government, nonprofits, faith leaders, food banks, the private sector, academia, and let's get everyone at the table. And so we all can contribute something here. And let's use this crossroads as an opportunity to build a plan not to manage hunger, but to end it. And so, we've secured funding in Congress to do this conference. My expectation is in the next week or so, we will be told the date, which I would expect would be sometime at the end of September. And I should tell you that, that this could be transformational. We used to think big in this country. We used to say, we're going to put a man on the moon, right? I'll tell you something. The last conference on this topic was in 1969, the year we put somebody on the moon. And so we need to go back to a time when we solve things, solve big problems. This is a big problem. 40 million Americans don't know where their next meal is going to come from. And so that's what this is all about. And I just will close with this. Look, there's a lot of cynicism out there, and a lot of people think we can no longer solve problems or do big things. We're doing that. No one ever notices the stuff that we're getting done. But this is something I think that is a moral obligation. If you've ever seen a hungry child, it breaks your heart. I go to senior centers where older people grab my hand and say, I worry about whether I can have enough to eat. And then you go into communities that what we call food apartheids. I don't call them deserts because those are natural. These are man-made, where people don't have access to fresh fruits or vegetables or anything remotely good, and they end up getting sick. When we talk about this problem, I'm looking at what's on the wall here. Together we can end hunger, food for growing, healing, for health, learning. I mean, this is not just about SNAP, right? It's about our schools. It's about our hospitals. Mm-hmm. It's about our farmers. It's about it's about housing. It's about 1,000 different things. And so we have an opportunity to do something meaningful. And your contributions here, and the fact that the Speaker of the House is doing this, mm-hmm. is pressure on the White House to say, you gotta think big. You gotta be bold. Aim high. Let's do this. And so I look forward to hearing from all of you, and I thank you for being here today. And I just want to now, it's my pleasure to introduce Chris Helfrich, the CEO of Eat, Learn, the Eat, Learn, and Play Foundation, started by Steph and Aisha Curry. We were just talking. I met him exactly a year ago, and it's incredible what is going on there. And we need to learn from what they're doing and what others are doing and help find ways to be wind at the backs of good ideas. And so I appreciate Chris being here, and I'm glad that you're with us today, and I'm going to yield the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Madam Speaker, Chairman McGovern, Tanis, for hosting this really important conversation today in this really beautiful location. And on behalf of Stephan and Aisha Curry and the Eat, Learn, Play Foundation, and I'll recognize Jose Corona in the front row, who runs all of our community efforts, and Marissa Trambly next to him, who runs all of our advocacy efforts. We're honored and humbled, really, to be amongst this really impressive group of local leaders who are doing the work tirelessly every day to nourish the most vulnerable citizens among us. This is a pressing issue in our hometown of Oakland, and we know it is here in San Francisco and across the country, too. Madam Speaker and Chairman McGovern, let me join the echoes here and just thanking you for your strong leadership on food security work and all you do for our country. I must thank Madam Speaker, especially for speaking to the Currys several years ago at the height of budget negotiations on this very topic. The $8 million that you helped secure, you were true to your word in those tough negotiations that you were going to prioritize this issue, and that's something we won't ever forget. Chairman McGovern, like you said, it's been a year to the day since you came to visit Eat, Learn, Play and all of our community partners in Oakland to see how we address food insecurity in our community. But thank you for involving us in this process. Thanks for allowing Aisha to testify before the House Rules Committee last year, and for the listening sessions that you're putting together for the White House conference next month. I've been really lucky to have a front row seat to the Currys' early advocacy efforts and these interactions that they've had with, Madam Speaker and Chairman McGovern have been so eye-opening, inspiring, and motivating to the Currys, and really has them thinking, what else can we do based on the work that we're doing in our community to make an impact on these issues at scale. So know that in the Currys and in Eat, Learn, Play, you've got strong partners. When we were only a few months old, the pandemic hit. And throughout the pandemic, we partnered with a host of community organizations from Oakland Unified School District and the Alameda County Community Food Bank and World Central Kitchen, all in all, to employ 130 restaurants to be feeding the community, be getting fresh produce out into Oakland, and help provide some 25 million meals to our kids and families in Oakland. And with 37% of kids in Oakland right now struggling with food insecurity, we're doubling down on our efforts and trying to find innovative solutions to have an impact, from helping to spearhead an effort to get Oakland Unified School District's new central kitchen fully operational, with the promise that it will deliver 9 million or more nutritious meals annually once it becomes operational, to our state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind Eat, Learn, Play bus, which is the coolest bus you've ever seen, and delivers 50,000 restaurant meals every year to the community, 500,000 pounds of produce. Now, to echo Aisha during her testimony last year, and Chairman McGovern, your remarks just a minute ago, we know that philanthropy and nonprofits alone can't solve hunger. The federal government plays an instrumental role and can and should do more to help the almost 14 million people in this country right now struggling with hunger. We're in total agreement with Tanis's stated priorities earlier. And in addition, some of the provisions and flexibilities provided during the pandemic offered a lifeline to schools and local agencies to provide meals to anybody who needed them. We should make a lot of those policies permanent. We also hope that the Childhood Nutrition Reauthorization Bill can be prioritized, ideally before the next election if possible. And we just believe overall that the federal government should strengthen safety net programs and make them more accessible for the families that are eligible. So thanks again for hosting this listening session. We're proud to do our part working alongside so many passionate, smart leaders that are here today. And thanks for the opportunity to be a part of the White House conference next month. I know Stephan and Aisha are excited to support however you can. And on behalf of Eat, Learn, Play, just thank you very much for the tireless work that you all do. So with that, happy to introduce Nils Benke from St. Anthony's.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction, Chris, and for sharing all your impressive work. Thank you, Speaker Pelosi, for your personal long-time support of St. Anthony's. We hope we can welcome you again at Thanksgiving this year to volunteer. I also want to say we deeply appreciate you for being such an outspoken advocate for our Franciscan movement and for our mission to create a society in which all persons can flourish. Thank you for that. And thank you, Chairman McGovern, for all your work on behalf of those in need, for convening the upcoming conference, for listening to us today, and also for reminding us of the moral obligation that we have in feeding everybody, and probably then some more that I would like to talk about. And Tanis and the team from the San Francisco-Marin Food Bank, thank you so much for our long-term cooperation here, fighting hunger, and for hosting us today. At St. Anthony's, we have served those most in need in our city in the Tenderloin since 1950, and it is our mission to recognize every human person's God-given dignity and to serve them with the respect they deserve, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what their circumstances are. We invite people to change their lives, not just our guests, but also our volunteers, our donors, and staff. In giving, we receive. When we can find change in our hearts, we can change our world. And despite the many challenges that we face in the Tenderloin today, which are well documented and publicized, I maintain that our ministry is fundamentally a very joyful one. We provide a broad range of services to our guests, starting with food services in our dining room. On a regular day, we serve more than 1,500 meals to our guests, breakfast and lunches. During the height of the COVID pandemic, while some of the other providers had to close their doors, we moved our services to the outside and served somewhere between 2,800 and 3,600 meals every day. That adds up close to 47 million meals since Father Alfred Bodecker first opened the dining room doors in 1950. At St. Anthony's, we are blessed with a very generous community who give their talents, time, and treasures. Our services, including our food services, are financed through private donations. We cooperate with the city and our partners, but we do not receive city funds for our work. One of the challenges we currently face is inflation. I want to give you one example. Food prices are up significantly. If you look at a 40-pound case of chicken thighs that cost us $92 in April, it is now $123. That's a 34% increase over just a couple of months. That is a big challenge for us. I also want to point out that we do not consider the impressive number of meals served by us as a sign of our success. Where we're called to serve people experiencing poverty with their immediate needs, our objective is to make that go away. And it's also to cater to the whole person and to help them achieve lasting positive changes in their lives. In this context, we think of our basic services, such as our food services, really as a gateway to stability. And I would like to give you a recent example of that from our dining room. A young father and his toddler were in our family section in our dining room eating lunch. After they were seated and the little girl was enjoying a warm meal, the father suddenly broke down and started crying. He had just come to the United States from Venezuela, was recently separated from his wife, couldn't speak English, and had nowhere to live. One of our Franciscan friars, Brother Martin, who is a native Spanish speaker, got some crayons and paper for the little one and accompanied the father to our free clothing program, our new hygiene hub with showers, and connected them with our social workers, who then helped him connect to other services and start getting his feet back on his feet. So this is one example of how this can work, and food is really just the first step on a longer journey. We accompany our guests on their individual journeys with a whole range of services like clinical and recovery services, social workers, workforce development, training, employment opportunities as well at St. Anthony's. We call this our companionship program. It is designed to especially help those experiencing chronic homelessness, substance use issues, and recent incarceration. Food is a very important first step, but we can't stop there. We believe that change is possible when we not only serve those most in need well, but also seize the opportunity to help them make lasting positive changes in their lives. Thank you so much for listening to us today. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our next participant, Michelle Pierce, the Executive Director of Bayview Hunters Point's Community Advocates. Michelle has 20 years of experience working on social and environmental justice issues in Bayview Hunters Point. Under her leadership, the Community Advocates implement programs to launch a neighborhood grocery cooperative, provide supplies to outside neighbors, collect residential oral histories alongside chemical industry documents, and plan an index of toxic sites in the neighborhood. She currently serves on the Reinvest San Francisco Working Group, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission Citizens Commission's Advisory Committee, almost, and she was part of the 2020 Census Redistricting Task Force.
Thank you very much. I don't know how I got deemed worthy to be at this roundtable, but I am so honored and so thrilled to be in this room with all of my fellow roundtable panelists, as well as everybody who is in this room. This work is so critical and so needed. And so I want to apologize for being late. We work with the unhoused community right down the street and get called out on emergencies. And by the way, I was on Missouri Street 3 blocks over working in public housing when I was supposed to be here. So my apologies, but that just expresses the need that everybody on this panel actually meets every single day. And when I say every single day, when we're not working on weekends, we are working on weekends. I got into this food services program via the environmental justice route. Our organization is an environmental justice organization, and that's the broader environmental justice movement umbrella, which includes social justice and economic justice and policy justice. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we were working on bringing a cooperative grocery store to this neighborhood because our neighborhood is, as the chairman described, a food apartheid. It is not a food swamp. It is not a food desert. It is intentional. We have food. We get our groceries, we get our milk and our bread from the liquor store. It's not a liquor store, it's a corner store. Everybody knows each other. It's a third generation owned, Middle Eastern American owned business that has been in our community since before I was born. But this is who supplies our groceries, and we are working on a healthy retail program in which we provide fresh produce from the produce market, which supplies all of the Michelin-starred, Michelin-rated, AAA-rated restaurants in the entire Bay Area, which is our office, which is right down the street from here. And yet, my community doesn't have access to those beautiful produce that the world comes to this city in order to enjoy. And we provide that to our community. And during the pandemic, I was getting calls up to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I am choosing between water, paying the water bill, and buying groceries this week. We don't know what to do. We can't go to work. We're on lockdown. And this, me connecting my community to the resources, is how we got into the food sovereignty business. And we're really interested in creating dignity and sense of control and access to health and not food in our community when we're talking about this. So, as has been stated in various ways, but we have changed the vocabulary a little bit. Every single person at this table, and I know in my heart, and I've seen the work they do, we do food sovereignty, not food security. We are bringing dignity back to this space. We are bringing fruits and vegetables into homes where people thought we could not bring fruits and vegetables into homes. We are bringing healthy produce where people thought culturally appropriate food did not belong in these communities. And when people say culturally appropriate, and we look at my neighborhood, which is in fact 42% Asian, 38% Latino, 10% Black, and 10% white, right here in Bayview Hunters Point. When we go to the people who receive our food boxes, our retail boxes, which are discounted because the people who pay full price are willing to subsidize the people who are on any kind of assistance. And we say, what is culturally appropriate to you? And they say, you know what? When we get our boxes from the food bank, when we get our boxes from UCSF, when we go to the shelters like St. Anthony's, like Mother Brown's, and we get our food, if there's something we don't recognize because we live in this beautiful, diverse neighborhood, we go to our neighbor down the street and we share our box. We share our bag. And they say, oh yeah, we know what to do with that. And they take it home and they cook it and they bring it back out. We have met our neighbors through your programs. These are not dignity programs. These are community building programs. These are life-saving programs. Through these programs, we learned, indeed, people were trying to choose between paying the water bill and paying the grocery bill. We got free filtered watering stations on 9 corners in our neighborhood so that people could show up and refill their water bottles. We met and made strong partnerships with the people who are on this panel, and we hope to continue to build that because this is a real thing. We shouldn't live in a country where one little tiny virus that even under a microscope you cannot see would cause people to be choosing between rent and food while farmers are stranded and are burning 3/4 of their crops, and it's not making it to us. These are the things we need to strengthen. There are mom and pop, there are Black and brown, there are women-run farms all over the country, but particularly here in the Central Valley, who have plenty of food and they're going under, and we go to them and we say, how do we support you? How do we prop you up? You are part of our community. You are far away, but you feed us. And they say, we can't get our food into the urban centers. How do we get our food to the people who need our food? This country can create the atom bomb. This country can create a rocket that will send people to the moon. This country can create Tesla cars and solar panels. We can figure out how to get food 200 miles in any of those vehicles, right? To the people, any of those vehicles, right? To the people who are choosing between their rent and their food. And this is why I'm honored. And I did want to say thank you very much for having me here, particularly Tanis. Thank you so much. The work you do is amazing. The dignity you are trying to bring back into this food pantry space is amazing. Speaker Pelosi, oh my God, Speaker Pelosi, absolutely. The work that you're still doing. I hope and pray that you live another 20 years and can continue to impact. And I know your kids and grandkids do too. I love them too. Chairman McGovern, that you are doing this speaking tour, that you are keeping the White House's feet to the fire is so incredible, And Chris and Niels, and particularly Dr. Martinez, Dr. Fielding Singh, and I really wanted to call you guys out because I get to say the 2 doctors at the table are the 2 women of color, and you don't know how much that means to a community like mine. This is impressive. This is important work. I am so thrilled to be here. I am so sorry I don't have more time to do things like these, to present to you guys, to the greater United States, just how important and impactful this work is. So thank you guys very much. And it is my true honor to introduce Dr. Martinez to talk after me. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Everybody, snaps for Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, for the introduction, and thank you, Speaker Pelosi and Congressman McGovern. for your leadership on addressing national food insecurity. I'm the lead researcher for the University of California Basic Needs Initiative. I'm also a professor at UC San Francisco. And in 2015, I co-led the first study of food insecurity in the UC system. And while one may think that college students are in a privileged environment, we found that 2 in 5 students were facing food insecurity out of 240,000. 2 in 5. We attributed part of this to the Great Recession, but national conversations were also starting to highlight the federal Pell Grant was at an all-time low. For what used to cover the costs of attending college, now only covered tuition and fees. That's a really big difference, when the most expensive part of going to college is food and housing. While many were in disbelief regarding our findings, the Government Accountability Office conducted a national study of food insecurity thanks to the request of Senator Warren and colleagues, and they found that up to 50% of students experienced hunger nationally. That validated our findings. And it also noted the changed demographics of contemporary students. Today's students are more likely to fit what some call a non-traditional profile, but better said, have intersectional identities from one or more historically marginalized groups. This includes students of color, first generation in their family to go to college, low income, therefore working while being full-time students, parenting students, students living with disabilities, and former foster youth. It is to no surprise that the research I have conducted across all 10 campuses show that these are the students at highest risk for food insecurity. UC students experiencing hunger are more likely to report poor mental health, poor perceived health, less than optimal health behaviors such as insufficient sleep, and poor academic performance. Like Chairman McGovern said earlier, it's all connected. Our first response in the UC system was to establish food pantries at all 10 campuses, which was made possible by the funding of the state and the work of my UC partners, Tim Galarno and Ruben Canedo, who also spoke at Chairman McGovern's House Rules last year. Upon establishing our pantry system, our findings showed that we were largely serving students from historically marginalized groups. And the more times a student visited the pantry, the better reported outcomes such as better sleep and better mental health and physical health. But we know that food isn't the only thing that our students lack. They also lack secure housing. Our research has found that students prioritize paying for rent over food. We also found that students define basic needs as adequate and nutritious food, safe and secure housing, access to transportation, and stability for mental and physical well-being. This finding has largely informed how the state and the UC system are defining basic needs and shaping federal legislation. Long-term solutions are needed for students to have the food they need to be the best students they came to the UC to be, mentally, physically, and academically. SNAP might be that solution, or even extending the National School Lunch Program beyond K through 12. We found that students who experienced hunger during childhood were 7 times more likely to experience food insecurity while in college. In California, we're working to make it easier for students to access CalFresh. We now offer CalFresh outreach at all 10 basic needs hubs at any of our UC campuses. We're also working with CDSS to provide clarity on how students can meet SNAP exemptions, such as the new Assembly Bill 396, which will allow students enrolled in local programs that increase employability to meet the criteria for an exemption to the student eligibility rule. Many of these programs exist on colleges all across the nation. We're fortunate to be in a state like California. We're also coaching other state university systems such as Arizona and Hawaii in this process. But there is much work to be done at the national level, and the model that we created here in the UC system is an example that the work can be done. So that concludes my remarks. I want to know where the White House conference after party is going to be. Actually, my colleague Ruben wants to know too. And today I leave behind the recommendations that we submitted to the Biden-Harris administration for the White House conference. I handed these out earlier. But just thank you for listening, and thank you for having me here today. And now I'm going to present Dr. Priya Fielding Singh, an assistant professor in the Department of Family and Consumer Studies at the University of Utah, and also a consultant for World Central Kitchen. So take it away, Priya.
Thank you so much, Professor Martinez, for the incredible work that you do, and thank you to Madam Speaker Pelosi and Chairman McGovern, as well as the San Francisco-Marin Food Bank for the opportunity and really the honor to be here today and to speak with and learn from such an esteemed group of expert panelists and attendees. So I am a sociologist and an ethnographer, and a central focus of my own research and advocacy around issues of hunger and nutrition insecurity is on understanding how broader systemic inequities drive intersecting disparities in what and how we eat. And foundational to that work is the perspective that I bring to it as a sociologist. And that perspective is informed by the understanding that while many of us who research, advocate, or legislate around issues of food are deeply invested in advancing nutrition equity across society, all of us know as human beings that food is about far more than nutrition. We don't just eat to nourish ourselves physically, we also eat to fulfill really important social, cultural, and emotional functions in our lives. We eat to connect with others, we eat to show love and care, to transmit culture, to signal who we are and where we came from and what we believe in. And so in my work, I conduct on-the-ground research within communities to investigate the complex meanings that food holds to people, and then to propose food policy solutions that explicitly account for these meanings. So this summer, as a consultant, I brought this expertise to work with the nonprofits World Central Kitchen and the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And together, we partnered with community organizations across the country, here in the Bay Area, as well as in Chicago and Selma, Alabama, to conduct listening sessions with individuals and families who had diverse lived experiences with hunger and nutrition insecurity. And the goal of these sessions was to explicitly center these families' experiences and needs in the creation of policy recommendations for the upcoming White House conference. And drawing from these sessions, we have now submitted 30 high-priority policy recommendations to the White House, and these recommendations will also be publicly released tomorrow as one component of a comprehensive report from a national nonpartisan task force that we're a part of. Now, because of the conference's scope, we focused our recommendations explicitly on food and nutrition-related policies. But as has been discussed here today, I'd be remiss if I didn't note that what we heard during listening sessions starkly underscored just how critical a holistic approach to advancing nutrition equity is. Alongside food and nutrition policies, we desperately need policies that address the root and upstream causes of hunger and diet-related disease, policies that tackle, for instance, exorbitant rents that leave families cost-burdened and food insecure, or inexcusably low wages that make a parent have to stretch their supermarket dollars as far as possible and prioritize their children's satiety over their nutrition. When we asked one mother in Oakland during a listening session about her food needs, I'll never forget how she instantly turned the conversation to the fact that she didn't have any dental coverage. She asked, "What good does an EBT card do if you don't have no teeth?" A holistic approach to solving nutrition insecurity is also essential because when difficult trade-offs between people's basic needs have to be made, as they so often are, it is almost always food, and it is always nutritious food that is sacrificed. As the saying goes, the red eats first. That's why we need to reframe nutritious food, access to nutrition food, as a human right to which every single person in this country is entitled, rather than a privilege for a worthy few. And this understanding of nutritious food as a human right then points us clearly toward policy solutions that remove as many barriers as possible for individuals, families, and communities to secure that food. Among the many straightforward and impactful policies that have been mentioned here today and that we can prioritize advancing through the upcoming conference We can simplify and streamline the process for families to learn about, enroll in, and then meaningfully participate in federal food assistance programs like SNAP and WIC. Doing so also requires increasing these programs' benefit levels and eligibility thresholds to ensure that households can adequately meet their own food needs. We can nationally universalize school meals for all children, like we're doing here in California, and make permanent the summer EBT program for lower-income families to help keep children food insecure all year round. And finally, our listening sessions with individuals who are experiencing homelessness or those with disabilities highlighted that we have to federally authorize SNAP for purchases of hot and prepared foods at grocery stores to ensure that no person is stripped of the means to secure a healthy meal, whether or not they have access to a kitchen or the ability to cook. These are just some of the policy solutions that can affirm nutritious food as a human right, and our hope is that the White House conference this September will propel us towards solutions like these that give us finally a real chance of ending hunger and advancing nutrition equity across the United States. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and thank you to all of you.
Mr. Chairman, that was quite remarkable and quite moving. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of Jose Andres, who is, if you are the godfather and the saint and the spiritual leader, he must be on a par of sainthood as well. Thank you for sharing that information with his very effective group. I just want to make a couple comments and then we have questions. First of all, you've anticipated some of our questions in terms of we are big believers in San Francisco. No matter what we're doing, Mr. Chairman, we always listen to the community-based solutions. Because you get the vocabulary that is working with communities in their words, what it means to them. You get solutions that work in a collaborative way, how people are willing to work together. So thank you so much for your important, and we feel very unworthy to be in your company, but thank you, Michelle, for being here and sharing those thoughts. And the other thing is, as you were speaking, Dr. Martinez, about food and then talking about shelter and all these other aspects of it. When we go to a housing meeting, people talk about food. You know, these things are all obviously very connected. And as you talked about the UC report, which is very important, those of us who interact with our community colleges and all the rest know that some of those kids, they don't know where their next meal is coming from, or if tonight they're going to sleep on somebody's couch, in somebody's car, or under a bridge. The housing needs are so great, and so there are some initiatives to just turn a room like this into a dormitory or a kitchen and a dormitory. No suggestion of that here, but and use this to give out the food. So these challenges are all connected. When we had our big conference on children, and we talked about all the elements in care of a child and education and parenting and the rest, people said the most important thing to their psychology is their housing, that would be secure, that they knew they had a place to live, and a place to live as you have indicated about the connection between Dr. Fielding Singh, between the socialization of food, the socializing of eating and what that means. Well, housing was a place where people knew that they might. But it all comes down, in my view, to the Gospel of Matthew. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was homeless, you sheltered me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. It's for everyone. But he also said, how did I ignore you, Lord? And he said, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. You didn't shelter me. You didn't clothe me. And so we have to remember that ignoring these needs is to ignore the God who made us. And all of us are doing the Lord's work in all this. Mr. Chairman?
Well, first of all, let me applaud you. No, I appreciate this. And let me say the value, because there's lots of different perspectives here. is it highlights the fact that in order to solve this problem, it's a lot of different things. You know, on Friday when I arrived here, I was in Redwood City with our colleague Anna Eshu, and I visited her brother-in-law, Larry Purcell, who runs the Catholic Workers House, and we also visited a church that was preparing meals for people. But you know, he said to me over and over and over again, we don't have a food shortage problem. You know, here people can't afford to live. The housing issue is a challenge, and if you can't afford your rent, then you have no money to buy food. And to the extent you have money, then you have to make very bad choices. And so we're all, you know, just trying to kind of manage this. And Michelle talked about food sovereignty and dignity is something that I feel very, very strongly about because let's be honest, you know, a lot of the people we serve with have no clue, and they certainly have no clue what the population of people who are food insecure look like. There's an automatic assumption that they're the unhoused, people who don't have any housing, or that they're jobless. They are included in those who fall in this category, but it's students at college, right? I mean, people think, oh, if you're a student at college, you're paying some tuition, no matter what it is. So you must have money to be able to afford your education and put meals on the table. And yet, as you know, I was saying to Dr. Martinez earlier, I mean, I did an event at Boston University and talked to students who didn't know, were going without meals because they couldn't manage everything. And you know, we got to figure this out, right? The population of people who are working multiple jobs, you know, paying high rents, you know, just trying to make ends meet, dealing with inflation, you know, as in those points, I mean, this is a very, very tough time. And there's a misperception that the people who fall in this category somehow don't want to work, which is just a big lie that has been told for a long, 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 long time. And unfortunately, you know, when lies go on for a long, long time and they don't get addressed, then they become part of the narrative. And the bottom line is that the people who are hungry in this country do not fall into a nice, neat category, right? I mean, it's young people, old people, working people. And by the way, it's not just, if you listen, I sit on the Agriculture Committee too, which I know that some of my colleagues, both not only Republicans but Democrats, are like, oh God, why is he here, right? But the bottom line is that, you know, we have people who don't even know what the average SNAP benefit is. Yeah. And that's the committee that oversees it, right? Mm-hmm. And you get people who, you know, who think that when we're talking about people who are on SNAP, that, well, we're talking about communities of color primarily. And the fact of the matter is the majority of people on SNAP look like me. And so it's like all these stereotypes we have to get over just to be able to have a conversation about how we fix this. But once we get over all of that, it's connecting the dots, right? People, and I want to say about food banks and this food bank in particular, and all that you do, St. Anthony's, you know, and Chris, all of you, you understand that, you know, food sovereignty is a big deal. People want to have some control over what they put in their bodies. They want to feed their kids good food. You know, food is medicine. Right? My grandmother used to say to me, "An apple a day keeps the doctor away." It would annoy me. I wish she was still alive so I could say, you know, you were right. The bottom, but I mean, we have to think out of the box, and so part of it also has to be like our healthcare system. Our healthcare system is so divorced from nutrition and these issues of hunger. That has to stop. I mean, if you can write out a prescription for a high-priced pharmaceutical, why can't you write out a prescription for fresh produce, right, everywhere, right? We got to have medically tailored meals that follow people home after they have surgeries and stuff to make sure they can get well and they have the nutrition to get well. Our schools, I mean, there are exceptions, but our schools are divorced from nutrition and food. I mean, you know, when did it become okay not to know how things are grown? And when did it become okay not to know how to prepare anything? If you can prepare food, you can actually stretch your dollar. It can be more nutritious for you. But we got generations that don't know how to cook. And the community gardens, I visited the Fangs the community garden, which was unbelievable. I know you've been there many times. I mean, bringing people together, right? Bringing people together, and not just getting people food, but people all of a sudden know that they're part of a community. They have neighbors, and they worry about one another. So it's not just about, are you having good food, but if Mrs. O'Leary doesn't show up one day at the garden, then Mr. O'Brien is going to be. I'm from Massachusetts, so that's why I say those things, right? We'll be like, where is she, right? Is she okay?
Let me brag about you for a moment. I wish you could have seen Jim McGovern on the floor of the House when some of our colleagues would stand up when we were trying to do nutrition increases and stuff, whether it was in the Farm Bill or whatever, when they would say, God said, if you want to eat, you must work. God feeds those who work. And we're talking about children, we're talking about seniors, we're talking about people who want to work. But that's the attitude. If you want to eat, you must work. Nils, you talked about the dignity and worth of every person. And I wish you could have seen Mr. McGovern when he respects the dignity and worth, the spark of divinity in every person. And when we're talking about visiting sites and treating people, is to treat them in an elevated way without any condescension, but with the total respect of our apology that we really have to even provide this service. I wish you could have seen him in the Ukraine talking to President Zelensky about the hunger situation that is being caused in Africa and other places because of the embargo on the ports in Ukraine, as well as the fast increase in fertilizer mills, which is causing the increase in many of our cost of groceries. He has been a champion globally, in this case we're talking about Ukraine, but for a very long time, about our responsibilities, not just to send food to people, but to enable them to produce their own. Cuba's a place that is like 87% arable and imports about 80% of their food because they don't have the factors of production. Why? Because we have an embargo, that we're going to all kinds of things here. But he's been a champion on Cuba. I mean, that's a whole other day. on just not about the politics of it, but about the people and meeting their needs with tremendous dignity, whether they are students, whether they, again, are suffering for a variety of reasons in all this. And I think of all the great things that the Currys have done, the name of Eat, Learn, and Play is so perfect because it's our mission, a goal, and a measurable success if we can achieve it. And nobody said it better than Tanis in her opening remarks about the full. Thank you so much, Tanis, for all of that. My question is, one of the questions we have is about flexibility. People keep saying we need more flexibility. Do you want to speak to that? Is that something you can identify, Mr. Chairman, in terms of a question?
I mean, yeah, and I think where the point is, I mean, some of the stuff that you're already doing is quite incredible, but the issue is, how can there be more flexibility on the federal side or the state side to help you do more of it and or connect the dots?
Do you have any comments to make about that?
Actually, directly to what Dr. Fielding Singh said, right at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a lot of people who were essential workers and ended up with this weird virus and were quarantined, or a family member was quarantined. I have to say about 90% of the people that we serve have jobs, multiple jobs within the household. So that narrative is a false narrative. But everybody else was ordering groceries and ordering more meals and getting their more meals. I think we in our community were some of the first people to point out that people on EBT had no access to any food at all if they were quarantined, period. We elevated that immediately up to the governor, who immediately elevated it up to you guys. And now we have systems where EBT can cover parts of Instacart or Amazon Whole Foods, but it's very limited. And that ability to actually use food assistance to cover warm meals when you cannot cook and you cannot get out, and the government is actually saying it is illegal for you to go out and feed yourself when you have children in the house, when you have grandparents and great-grandparents in the house, and none of you are allowed to leave. I think that's a huge thing. The flexibility of prepared meals in all of their forms, and or in supporting neighbors who are going to need to stay home in order to prepare those meals for you in all of their forms. When we are seeing COVID is here, it's still here. It's pretty rampant right now, but we're also seeing monkeypox on that back, and we're seeing something that I never thought I would see in my lifetime beyond 5 years old, polio coming back. Like, these are things that as the world warms, we're going to see a lot more of. And I would love to see some more flexibility in those food supply systems within the safety net. That's a critical thing for us.
Let's start with presumed eligibility for CalFresh. Like, can we just start there? It is not acceptable to look for ways in which we exclude people from the fundamental support that is the most effective anti-hunger, anti-poverty program in the nation. So what is working well, and how do we make sure that we can reduce inaccessibility? Let's start there.
I would like to add to that. For me, it's like eliminate the student eligibility rule. We have many college students who are eligible, and because of the difficulty in the application process, we have students who don't get CalFresh because they missed their interview phone call, and because they're in class, or because they're working, or they're taking care of their children or picking them up from school. And so that is just one, that rule was made back in the 70s, and it's one rule that needs to be re-examined and hopefully eliminated.
I do want to say this as well. There is this complaint from some of your brethren in Congress about people using their benefits for steak and lobster.
Yeah.
Who cares? Okay. These are some of the most nutritious and densely packed sources of protein and omega-3 fats in the world. And I'm sorry, anybody who is really, really hungry, if they get something as rich as a lobster, they're going to eat on that for a whole week. That, like, 3 forks full fills you up. I mean, let's get over it, and let's actually give people what they need. And I can tell you, anybody who is grabbing a steak or a lobster probably hasn't seen a protein on their plate in a good month. Who cares? So I did want to say that.
Well, but that isn't a reason, it's an excuse.
Yeah.
It's just,
Obviously, yeah.
But there's dignity in choice. And Nils, I mean, I visited the Tenderloin District last time I was here, and I was at some event where they were passing out bags of fresh produce to people, and people would come up to me and just say, no, just give me a little bit. And I finally asked, like, the 4th person who said it to me, like, why don't you want the whole bag? And it wasn't that they were unhoused. It wasn't that they didn't have a place to live. They didn't have a kitchen or adequate refrigeration. So it was like, I have a place to live, but I don't have the other stuff. So the people that you serve, I mean, are there a lot? I mean, that's where the pre-made meals is so vitally important, right?
Yeah. One of the things that our president has been about, that you alluded to, Michelle, and not alluded to, had central to your comments, is about justice. And in all of the bills that we have passed, whether it was the rescue package or the bipartisan, which had 100% Democratic votes, no Republican votes, if I just may, I'm just talking history here, not politics. And then we had the bipartisan infrastructure bill, a little bit bipartisan, but nonetheless, he was proud of that. And then the the bill that we passed, well, the one we just passed, the innovation, the Inflation Reduction Act, but everything in between, he has said, I insist on justice. So when it's doing infrastructure, or whether it's doing innovation or it's doing any of these things, that there's a $60 billion in one bill alone to make sure that it has environmental justice. But that also means in infrastructure, if you're building, people were afraid of the bill because they said if they build another road or bridge or highway or something through my neighborhood, it divides the neighborhood. The president said, take it down, unite neighborhoods. When we just did the big bill on climate, the Inflation Reduction Act, on climate that Mr. McGovern had so much to do with, it was, I mean, without him, we would have never had it on the floor. It was quite a challenge. But it was about saying this is about environmental justice. That's about health. It's about clean air, clean water for our children, to reduce asthma and the rest. So whatever the subject happens to be, including food availability, housing, all the subjects that are injustices in our society and our economy, the president wants to know, initiates, how do we have this as a centerpiece, justice as a centerpiece of the issue. And as you know, he's relentless, relentless on that subject. So let's hope that we'll cross a threshold, that we'll be talking about these things in a completely different way. So it's not about trickle down, it's about bubble up. Where are the needs? Now let's let that rise up so that it has an impact on our entire economy.
Thank you. I just wanted to start by remarking that I haven't seen too many lobsters around in the Tenderloin, so it may just be me. But
I would just say about meals, though, when we are there to feed, of course the press wants to come and do this and that, and we're just really much about, this isn't about the press, this is about respecting their dignity, their privacy. We don't know under what circumstances they've come here, but want their comfort level to be what prevails, and you have been such a master and all that.
Thank you for the kind words. I think I also want to thank you for reminding us of the Matthew Gospel, because the court, it doesn't say who's deserving, right? That is not a question that's there. And I wouldn't want to be judged of who is deserving, who is not deserving. Who are we to judge, right? I don't think we should do that. I think one thing that I will say is that we have a lot of programs, especially in our city. It's a very generous city. There are plenty of programs. One of the challenges is just that programs don't come together for people. Right. And a lot of the people that we are called to serve have never experienced stability as we conventionally know that in their lives. So like, I'm not a social scientist, but you can look at 10 different elements of stability. Food stability is one of them, right? Housing, mental health, like physical health, and so on and so on. And it is just very, very difficult with point interventions and programs to reach people who are hard to reach and who can't really put it together for themselves. And I think one of the things that we work on a lot is like, how can we be the guide, the companion, to really make it come together for a person? And of course, the more complex a program is, the more eligibility requirements you have, the harder it is to access. And we're asking people who do not have many resources, that's why they find themselves in this situation, to put it together for themselves. So lowering these barriers and helping the coordination so that it's not about programs, about people who are uplifted, I think that is the way we need to go.
And as we do this requires very clear outreach. And as we do that outreach, we call upon you to help us with what would be the best way to do that. Yes, we can streamline the programs, but if people don't even, sometimes people don't, you have no idea what I have to go through in this sophisticated district to make sure people know they're entitled to an earned income tax credit. It's money in their pocket, but they just don't know about it. And we again, the outreach piece is best addressed listening to what works from the standpoint of the community rather than telling people this is how you should take advantage of this.
And if I could just One of the things that we've been really insistent on, first of all, I think many of you have already participated in some of the White House virtual listening sessions, which have been at capacity. I mean, they're getting so many recommendations, and they're hearing so many good ideas, which is a good problem to have. But one of the things we have been very, very focused on is making sure that in the conversation that we have people with lived experiences who are actually saying, okay, I've been through all this, right? And here's what worked, here's what didn't work. And in that process, we're also learning about the stigmatization that exists. It's, because people don't like coming forward and saying, hey, I need help. And sometimes they're always not greeted with people like that are at this table or in this room. And I remember I was at a food bank in Worcester where I live, and I went to do a tour, and they had built a new wing, similar to, not as nice as this, but don't tell anybody. And I got out of my car to go and to tour the place, and there was a gentleman sitting in a car next to where I got out. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and I nodded, and he nodded, and I went in, I did my tour, I came back out, and he was still there. And he had the window down a little bit. And I said, hi, how you doing? And he said, oh, all right, okay. I said, are you here to do a tour? He said, no, I'm here because I need food for my family. And when I saw you, I felt embarrassed. And I didn't go in, which made me feel horrible. But it made me also understand, that this is difficult. Yeah. And so as we come up with these solutions, I know what to expect from my friends on the right. But I also worry about some of my friends, on the good side, who will say, okay, I know what's best for everybody, so I'm going to limit your choices. Here's your SNAP dollars, and so you can only buy, organic. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we want you to make good choices, but that's your choice. Some of the worst choices made in terms of diet are by people of means. Look at the previous president of the right. So the bottom line. So we don't. The dignity part of this is really important. And Chris, when I visited, with you guys a year ago, I appreciate the respect and the dignity and just this is. We're a community, right? And communities help one another. And sometimes you won't need help very much, all the time. But once you're on your feet, then you help somebody else. It's just the way it's supposed to be. It's not a handout. It's not. I don't even like to call it charity, right? We have to deal with stigmatization, and we have to make sure that as whatever the White House comes up with, that it respects the community who we're trying to benefit. When I was a kid growing up, when they do the food drives, you'd always take the junkiest junk in your shelf and put it out for the food bank to pick up, and that was the way it was, right? Thankfully, the food banks of today are connecting the dots. What you eat goes to your health and well-being, so we don't want to solve one problem and create another. So it's all very, very different, and that's all good. But
I want to just say about you, though, because I've been to your district, I've seen your interaction with your constituents, whether it was at a child care center or some other service into the community. And while I talked about him globally and nationally in the Congress, he practiced what he preaches back home and listens to his constituents, and that's why he's become the champion that he is on these issues in the manner in which he has. He's revered in the Congress, he's respected back home, and he's acknowledged as the leader not only in our country but in the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you're nice to say that, but let's be very clear about one thing. She's the Speaker of the House, right? And nothing happened. We wouldn't even have. We tried when President Obama was president to get this up and running, right? And and I love President Obama, loved all the people, and we had some interesting conversations. But the idea of tackling this head on, we just couldn't get the movement that we needed. And then we had 4 years of which we're going to forget about, which we're not going to, we tried, and we worked it. It wasn't until the Speaker picked up the phone and said, "Look, you got to do this. This is important." You know, it's unacceptable that 40 million people are hungry in this country. And by the way, we have people in our community who are doing great work that if we could expand it or be wind at their back, we could solve this problem. So get with it. And so now the issue is we have to make, they're doing it, they're listening. We have to make sure that there's an expectation that we expect big things from them, and that this is not a one and done deal, that it's not a press conference, that there's consultation at the local level, because to be honest with you, San Francisco is different from Worcester, is different from Mitchell, South Dakota, right? I mean, that's the other thing. I got to be honest with you, our benefit program, one glove fits all. You live in Mitchell, South Dakota, your cost of living is X. You live in San Francisco, or you live in Boston or Manhattan, and you're still, you adhere to the same criteria for SNAP benefits or anything else. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? So we got to, you know, a lot of this stuff has to be, we have to think out of the box, and that's what this is going to be about. So we really need we need to stay in touch with you. We need to be part of this, and you know, and again, some of the, you know, and please thank Aisha for her testimony before the Rules Committee. I'm going to tell you two things. One is it was very powerful because of what you're doing. And, you know, it's also, and this is, you know, sometimes it takes people who are well-known to take a microphone and say, hey, let's do something. Yeah. You know, it helps. You know, and Congress is a place where, you know, it doesn't matter why you're famous. They gravitate to you, like, you know. I mean, they people want to be associated with, you know. But people using their status and their, you know, to be able to advocate, you know, for people who really don't have a voice.
If I just may follow up on that, Mr. Chairman, and thank the Currys for bringing their celebrity. We're all in the attraction business. We think we are. They are. And we can only attract so much attention to an idea. They can magically do so. This is going to sound, well, you be the judge. A conference on hunger in America can be translated by some to a conference on poverty in America. There are some in the Congress who don't think that poverty is a winning political idea. So what we're doing with this conference, and why I'm so proud of the President and the Chairman for demanding and insisting upon it, is that we are crossing a threshold. We're honoring our values, whatever the political consequences are. Maybe it's a bigger deal to have a conference on sports or something like that. This is saying to the country, this is our priority. You may or may not experience this. You may or may not be turned on this, but this is the priority. It's a big departure from saying, what's the most politically advantageous conference we can have? Mm-hmm. It's about what is the most decent, godlike, I mean, doing the Lord's work conference we can have, whatever the political consequences, but with the results, that R word, with the results that we need for the people. So that's why your participation, your input going into it, your implementation of coming out of it is so really important, because this is a transition for us, for our country, to be saying this is of the highest priority to America, regardless of the politics. So thank you for what you're doing.
Great. Speaker Pelosi, Chair McGovern, all of our panelists, this is a clear clarion call that food is everything and it is a human right. We're going to take this message straight to the White House, because we will take this moonshot that it is not acceptable to manage hunger. We must end it. Thank you all so much.
Let us thank San Francisco-Marin Food Bank.